Evergreen High was the kind of place where everyone had a place, even if that place was at the edge of the crowd. There were the loud ones who made noise to be noticed, the confident ones who owned every hallway, and the quiet ones, the ones who slipped between conversations like shadows. Claire Reynolds was one of those quiet ones. To most people, she wasn't mean or shy. She simply didn't exist enough to be remembered. In a school filled with noise, she was the silence no one heard. Evergreen High moved around her like a storm, one she learned to navigate without being swept away. She liked it that way, or at least she told herself she did, because sometimes invisibility was safer than attention. But here, in the art room, Claire wasn't invisible. The walls didn't whisper, the brushes didn't judge. Here, her world was made of colors, not words. She drew the things she couldn't say, the people she wished she could be. Each sketch was a confession, every line a quiet plea for someone to finally see her. Then came Avery Blake, Evergreen High's golden girl, captain of the cheer team, student council darling, the kind of girl who didn't just walk into a room, she arrived. Wow, that's supposed to be me, right? You should have asked. I'd have posed. Avery didn't mean the words to sound cruel, at least not at first. But the laughter behind her sharpened them into something that cut deeper than she realized. Claire said quietly, "It's just practice." Avery, still smiling, said, "Well, keep practicing. Maybe one day people will actually notice your work. Cruelty in high school never arrives with thunder. It's quiet, polished. It comes wrapped in laughter and perfume, and it stays long after everyone else leaves." That night, Claire couldn't draw. Every time her pencil touched paper, she heard the laughter again. Sharp, echoing, real. So she sketched something different. She drew herself. Not as she was, but as she felt. Invisible, forgotten, small. Art was the only place she could exist without apology. It was the only way she knew how to scream quietly. "You have a gift, Claire. You don't draw perfection. You draw truth." And that's something most people spend their whole lives trying to find. Compliments didn't come often at Evergreen High, but those words, "you draw truth," settled somewhere deep. They stayed with her through the noise of the day, like a quiet heartbeat of hope. For the first time in a long while, Claire Reynolds didn't feel invisible, and for the first time, Avery Blake noticed her. Because in places like Evergreen High, confidence is currency, and when someone new starts to shine, someone else always feels the light dim. The art competition was the talk of Evergreen High. A yearly tradition, a way for the school's best to prove themselves beyond cheer trophies and football wins. This year's theme was identity, and for Claire Reynolds, that word meant everything she didn't know about herself. After Mr. Thomas's words, something had shifted in her, a spark. It wasn't confidence exactly, more like curiosity. What would it feel like to finally show people who she really was? For Avery Blake, the competition was just another chance to win, another opportunity to keep her perfection untouched. But when she noticed Claire working alone by the window, something in her expression faltered. For the first time, she wondered, what if the quiet girl had something worth noticing after all? Mr. Thomas said, "Remember, your art should tell a story, not someone else's. Yours." For Avery, the idea of imperfection terrified her. She'd built her entire image on being untouchable, flawless. And now, the thought of losing to someone invisible felt like a threat she didn't know how to ignore. One of Avery's friends whispered, "Did you see the quiet girl's drawing? It's kinda weird." Avery says lightly, "Oh, Claire? Yeah, she's trying." That was how it started, not with open cruelty, but with small cracks, the kind no one else noticed, until it spread. While others went home to laughter and noise, Claire stayed behind. Her drawings began to change, darker, more personal. Her faceless figures now had eyes, heavy with emotion. Her art began to breathe. And for the first time, people noticed. One of the students said, "Whoa, did you see Claire's work? That's actually amazing." It was small, a flicker of recognition, but to someone who'd spent her life unseen, it felt like sunlight after years of shade. Avery saw it too, the whispers, the glances, the spark that once belonged only to her. And for the first time, Evergreen High's perfect girl felt something unfamiliar. Fear. She didn't show it, not yet. Instead, she began to weave her response carefully, the way she always did. With charm, with subtlety, with control. So, funny thing, my mom said she saw Claire's painting online. Someone must have posted it. It looks a lot like this. And just like that, a whisper was born. Rumors don't need truth, just the right mouth to speak them. Claire didn't understand at first. Then she saw her own work on a screen, her self-portrait beside a painting she'd never seen before. Same pose, same sadness. The caption read, "Inspiration or imitation?" For most students, it was just another passing story. But for Claire, it was everything. The one thing she had, twisted against her. She didn't cry. Not that day. She just walked, steady, quiet, back to the place where her drawings hung alone. Her sanctuary no longer felt safe. But Mr. Thomas found her there. He didn't ask what was wrong. He didn't need to. Mr. Thomas said softly, "Real artists feel deeply, Claire. That's what makes their work powerful. And dangerous. Don't let their noise drown your voice." His words stayed, quiet but steady, like a heartbeat under chaos. Every brushstroke was defiance. Every tear that fell became part of the painting. She wasn't just creating art anymore. She was reclaiming herself. By morning, she didn't know it yet. But that painting, the one born of pain, would change everything at Evergreen High. And in that moment, the invisible girl began to be seen. Rumors spread quietly at Evergreen High, not with shouting, but with whispers. The kind that slither through hallways, passed between smiles and screens. By Monday morning, everyone had heard it. Claire Reynolds, the quiet girl who painted sadness into beauty, had stolen her art. In 3 days, she'd gone from invisible to infamous. She tried to ignore it, to move through the noise like it wasn't hers. But that's the thing about lies. They find ways to touch even the strongest silences. She froze. Not because of the word, but because of the handwriting. It looked like Avery's. Avery Blake knew how to fight without ever getting her hands dirty. Her weapon was image. A picture, a post, a rumor carefully timed. She'd mastered it long before anyone realized they were playing her game. But what Avery didn't know was that guilt has a way of echoing too. For the first time, she couldn't sleep easily. Winning had always felt good, but this didn't feel like winning. All right, everyone. The finalists for the art competition will be announced this Friday. And remember, your work is judged anonymously. Talent always finds its truth. Those words, talent always finds its truth. They echoed louder than the gossip, and for the first time, Avery felt her certainty waver. Claire hadn't told anyone about the rumor. She didn't defend herself. She let the silence speak because words never saved her before. She decided that if they were going to look at her, then they would see her truth. Not their story, hers. By Wednesday, she'd finished. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, raw, beautiful, flawed. The air was thick with anticipation, and in the center of it all, 2 paintings stood apart. One, a bright portrait of cheer and color, Avery's. The other, a haunting mirror of 2 selves, Claire's. Avery's friends whispered eagerly. They were certain she'd win again. She always did. But when the judges stopped at Claire's painting, they didn't move on quickly. They stayed, studying, silent. The principal said, "The winner of this year's Evergreen High Art Exhibition, entry number 27. The number belonged to Claire, the girl who'd been invisible, the girl they called fake." And in that moment, silence found its voice. Avery didn't clap right away. Her chest ached in a way she didn't understand. It wasn't anger anymore. It was something closer to shame. "You didn't need to disappear to be seen. I'm sorry." Forgiveness didn't come that day. But something else did. Understanding. A quiet kind of peace that doesn't need applause. Evergreen High would forget the rumor, but they wouldn't forget the girl who stayed true when no one believed her. And somewhere, in the quiet between yesterday and tomorrow, both Claire and Avery learned the hardest lesson of all, that growing up isn't about being perfect. It's about finding the courage to be real. The rumor had faded, but its shadow lingered. Whispers had died down, posts had been deleted, and the halls of Evergreen High had moved on, at least on the surface. But inside, two hearts carried what the rest of the world forgot. For Claire Reynolds, the victory never felt like triumph. It felt like relief, fragile, trembling, but real. She'd proven something, yes, but she still didn't understand what it meant to be seen. For Avery, the silence after the storm was louder than the applause. Her reputation had survived, but something in her had cracked, the part that once believed being perfect meant being loved. That afternoon, she found herself standing in the art room doorway, uncertain, hesitant. It was strange, being the one who didn't belong there. Avery said softly, "Hey." They stood in silence for a while, the air heavy, awkward, full of everything unsaid. Apologies are strange things. They don't erase what happened, but sometimes they open the door that's been locked the longest. Avery said quietly, "These are my old sketches. I thought, maybe you could use them for reference." "You're good, Claire. Really good." Claire said softly, "Why are you doing this?" Avery said, "Because I was wrong. And I don't want to be that person anymore." There it was, the thing Avery had never said to anyone before. Not to her parents, not to her friends, not even to herself. She wasn't perfect. And maybe she didn't want to be. Claire, after a pause, said, "It hurt when people believed it. I thought I'd finally done something right, and then..." Avery said, "I know, and I'm sorry. I told myself it was harmless, just gossip. But I saw your face that day, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. Forgiveness didn't come easily, but sometimes just being brave enough to ask for it, that's where healing begins." Claire said, "I'm not mad anymore. I want to move on." Avery said, "Then maybe we both can." In that moment, something fragile began to mend. Not a friendship, not yet, but an understanding. A silent agreement that both had been broken in different ways, and both were learning to heal. Life at Evergreen moved forward. Rumors faded into memory, trophies gathered dust, and new stories began to bloom. But something lasting had been planted that spring, a quiet lesson that would follow them long after graduation. Sometimes growing up isn't about forgetting what hurt you, it's about learning that even the people who hurt you can change. Claire said softly, "I think I finally found her." And somewhere, in the quiet halls of Evergreen High, two girls who once lived in opposite worlds finally saw themselves, not as rivals, not as enemies, but as stories still being written. Because sometimes the hardest art to create is the one that turns pain into peace. Years had passed since that spring. Evergreen High had moved on, as schools always do. But some memories, like brushstrokes on a canvas, refused to fade. And some lessons, the hard ones, lingered in ways that shaped the people we became. Claire had returned, not as a student, but as an artist invited to display her work. Her hands, once trembling over brushes and pencils, now moved with quiet confidence. Her art had grown, but her heart had grown too. The painting still held the story of a girl who once felt invisible. But now, looking at it, she saw something else. Resilience, strength. A reminder that being seen doesn't always mean being understood. Avery Blake, too, had changed. The golden girl of Evergreen High was still radiant, but she no longer needed perfection to define herself. She had learned that vulnerability could be stronger than control. It took only a moment for the years to fall away. The rivalry, the envy, the rumors, all of it felt distant, like a painting left unfinished in a corner, part of the past, but no longer holding them captive. Claire said softly, "I didn't expect to see you here." Avery, smiling, quietly said, "Neither did I. But some stories, they don't end where you think they will." They walked among the works, silent at first. Each piece told a story, some old, some new. And somewhere between the colors and shadows, they found understanding. Avery said softly, "You've always had this ability to make people feel something real. I'm glad you never disappeared." For Claire, those words carried the weight of years. Not just an apology, but acknowledgement, recognition, and in it, hope. Claire said, "I didn't know if anyone would ever see it, really see it. But I guess some things take time." Avery says, "Yeah, some things do." And in that quiet art room, years after whispers and rumors, two girls who had once defined each other by fear and envy finally understood each other and themselves. Evergreen High would always be a place of beginnings and endings. But for Claire and Avery, it became a place of transformation. The invisible girl had been seen, the golden girl had learned humility, and both had learned the most important lesson of all: that growing up isn't about winning or being perfect. It's about facing the truth of who you are and learning to let others see it too. Kindly subscribe, like, and comment to watch more.